Hey there, internet friends. Trevor Starkey here with another episode of That Nerdy Site Show, a weekly podcast where the team members from That Nerdy Site get together to talk about our lives and all of the nerdy things we love about them. I'm your host, Trevor Starkey, as I said, and it's a solo show this week. This is, as I'm recording it, it is Valentine's Day, so Logan is off doing things with his partner. Cam didn't get back to me, and Frank and Jazz are still kind of out of commission. Frank with his kind of PC down, and Jazz with no microphone to really sit down and record. So I figured I would just do a quick and easy little podcast here. I have two games that I'm going to be talking about today. One is Carto, which is a cute little puzzle game that I found on the Xbox Game Pass. And then another is I basically replayed through the original Mass Effect this last week. So I'll be talking about that in a little bit. Before we get into that, a little bit of housekeeping. If you like what you hear, please remember to rate, subscribe, share the podcast with friends, all that fun stuff. And if you're feeling extra generous, you can always support us on Patreon at patreon.com/thatnerdysite, just like all of our wonderful Patreon producers do. So yeah, like I said, kind of kicking things off, I want to talk a little bit about this game Carto that I discovered. It came out last year on, I think, on like pretty much everything. I think it started on PC, but then came to Switch and PlayStation and Xbox. And I just missed it last year, but it came to or it's on Game Pass now. And I'd seen a couple people kind of talking about it online, so I checked it out and had a good time with it. It is a cute little puzzle game. The premise is basically you are this girl, Carto, short for cartographer, I guess. And you and your grandmother kind of like fly above the world, and your grandmother kind of introduces that you guys have this ability, this power to pick up the like world map and reposition it. And when you do that, the world, rotates or moves around you. One thing leads to another, and she kind of gets separated from her grandmother, and so the game becomes a journey of getting back to your grandmother through all of these fragmented worlds. The map basically like got split apart, and so you are kind of going through little area by area, island by island kind of grouping of things, and picking up the pieces of the map, rotating them to meet certain criteria, or to like enable certain people to get to certain places, stuff like that. It's just a cool little mechanic for a puzzle game. I'm a big fan of puzzle games. I think maybe infamously a few years back, what was it, 2016? I think it would have been the year that a lot of people were giving Uncharted for their game of the year. I gave The Witness my game of the year because I just really loved the puzzles of that game so very deeply. And so yeah, Carto, not necessarily like Witness levels of puzzling, but it's cool. It has a great little art style, and has just a fun little growing cast of characters as you go from like one area to another. Like you start out kind of at a little island nation, and you make a friend, and the traditions of that island require that this girl who's now come of age basically leaves the island and never returns. And she doesn't want to. She wants to be able to come back to her family, but they're kind of they're against it. That the past exists for a reason, tradition, blah blah blah. But she befriends Carto, and kind of like you put everything in place so she can still leave the island and kind of follow through with their tradition. And then she moves on to like a little forest area where she has to kind of find people in this forest. The forest has a very like Lost Woods kind of vibe to it, where you position two pieces of the forest, and based on clues, you kind of have to figure out, okay, well, where do I need to, which of the four directions do I need to go? And once you figure that out, you need to position the other forest tile of the map that you have in that place so you can actually go down. Because if basically you're confined to the tiles of the map that you have control over. So if you have like two squares, you can't go beyond those two squares. If they're not connected, you can't go beyond the one square that you're in. So yeah, it's a little hard to explain. It's much easier to understand if like you're seeing it and you're kind of seeing the pieces flip. Like I said, you can also rotate pieces sometimes. That comes in handy. One of my favorite little sections was like an oasis area where basically you had to kind of follow a little treasure hunt to figure out how to bring water back to this oasis. And as you like as you solve some of these puzzles, you'll unearth other pieces of the map that help you kind of progress through the puzzles and kind of overall story. So yeah, it's just a really cool, really clever little game. I mean, it took me, I want to say, it probably took me like 3 or 4 hours to beat the whole thing or something. It's a very quick experience, easily completed in one sitting. Um, if you wanna, there's like extra little secrets you can find if you want to like 100% the thing, or on PlayStation go for a platinum trophy or stuff like that. I again was just playing it on Xbox Game Pass, so I figured no harm no foul if I hop in and don't like this game. But I really had a good time with it. So, Carto, especially if you're a fan of puzzle games, and especially if you have Xbox Game Pass, go check it out. If you don't, it might even be something worth checking out on the Switch or on the PlayStation or Steam. Highly recommend. I really enjoyed it. It's one of those games, like if I had played it last year, a la the year it came out, it probably would have. I don't know if it would have been in my top 10, but it certainly would have been on my top 20 list. So, yeah, Carto, really cool little game. I want to say it's like a humble bundle game. Like it's one of the or humble games game. From I think the studio behind it is a studio called Sunhead Fish Games. I don't remember now off the top of my head. But yeah, it's just a cool little title. So highly recommend Carto from me. And then, like I said, the other game that I spent a lot of time with this last week was Mass Effect. I went back and, despite knowing that we have the Legendary Edition coming out here in a couple months' time, like 3 months' time from recording, I think. I was like, I'm really getting that itch, and I'm still playing some Hitman. Enjoying. There will be a Let's Play that goes up tomorrow as of this episode's airing, that is me playing through the min max levels that they just introduced in Hitman. So I'm having fun, like continuing to play that. I'm still I'm playing a lot of Fortnite right now, where I'm up to like level 100, almost 160 in that for this season. And yeah, despite all that, I was like, I'm looking for something to do. I've had an itch to go back and replay Mass Effect for a while, probably since talking about it on one of the that Ultimate Video Game List shows. But I was like, but the remaster is always going to be right around the corner. And now that like it finally is right around the corner, I was still like, but I can also go hop in and play it on Game Pass as well. Like the original one is just on Game Pass naturally, but Mass Effect 2 and Mass Effect 3 are also in there because of the EA Play partnership with Game Pass. So I was like, let me. I'm going to be very curious to see how they upgrade the first game in particular in the Legendary Edition. So it'll probably help if like the first game is very fresh in my mind. I don't know if I'll continue playing through games 2 and 3 in the series in this like, immediate replay that I'm doing. But I wanted to kind of have the original game fresh in my mind. So when I do eventually play the Legendary Edition game, in a couple months, I can kind of compare and contrast and hopefully really see, where they kind of improved things. And going back to the original game, it didn't like it wasn't as bad as I thought it was going to be in terms of like, oh, this doesn't hold up really well. Like there are definitely a lot of things where I'm like, oh, I wish things like this were better. Like for example, pet peeve that I have in pretty much every game, but it was very apparent in this, is if you've ever got a menu, either like going side to side, like through menus, like, oh, I'm going through the map, and then I'm going through my equipment, and then I'm going through, settings or whatever, just let it loop around. Like if I get to the end, I don't want to have to go all the way back to the beginning if that's where I need to go. I want to just like do a right one more time and get back over there. Same with going down. Like if I get to the bottom of the list, just let me push down one more time and take me to the top of the list. Don't make me scroll all the way up to the top. That's just like a super pet peeve in gaming, and like I don't think any of the Mass Effects fix that. But that's something that definitely jumped out at me this time, especially as I was going through. Anytime I was reaching the 150 items limit, and had to start like clearing out items into converting to Omnigel or something like that to make room for more items, I got frustrated how many times I had to like scroll down to like reach the lower gear, to remove it. And I hate that has continued on into this generation with stuff like Destiny and whatnot. So, and Marvel's Avengers. So boo to menu management nonsense like that. But regardless, the standout things, of course, with Mass Effect are the characters, are the this immense world that they've created, like multiple worlds. The history of the galaxy that they've created with all these other species. I'd forgotten just like how much I enjoyed that. I've not revisited the games since Mass Effect Andromeda came out, and Mass Effect Andromeda really didn't work wonders for me. I wished it was a better game, and at launch, I was hopeful that okay, this was basically the Mass Effect one of this new series, so I'll look forward to seeing where Andromeda 2 and 3 go, and then we just never got Andromeda 2 and 3, and that's disappointing. But yeah, as I go back and think about Andromeda now, I don't remember any of the characters in that or anything really. And so going back to one here. I had like I hop in the game. I'm like, oh, that's right. Hanar and Elcor are like these, subspecies, or not subspecies, but other species in the world that just didn't even make the trip to the Andromeda galaxy in the first game, or in Mass Effect Andromeda. So like I had forgotten about them in this universe a little bit, and so like seeing them pop up and seeing kind of their like character archetypes and all that stuff, and just talking to them again was a ton of fun. And then hearing things about the Krogan rebellions and the Rachni War and the First Contact War with the Turians and stuff. Like I love how much detail they put into the game, and even more if you want to go and dig through the codex and all that stuff. But even just in what you can get, kind of like talking to other people in the world, there's just such a rich history to that world that helps flesh it out so much, especially so much more compared to so many of the other games we get these days. Like the one of the comparisons I would draw really, in this last generation of games would be something like Horizon Zero Dawn, which I think does another great job of having such a rich history behind each of like the little settlements that you encounter in that game, as to how their kind of little mini religions grew forth, and how you know resonant they are compared to the real world religions around us today, and or like historic mythology and stuff like that. Like there's such an ingrained history in the history of the world in Horizon Zero Dawn that I love. I'm excited to see that continue in Forbidden West later this year. Hopefully, fingers crossed. And so yeah, going back to Mass Effect, I thought it's just there's just such a richness to that world and to the characters. Hopping in, I specifically was decided to do like a Renegade run this time because I typically don't play Renegade. I typically like I want to say, what was it, like 80% of gamers or something when these kind of games come up play Paragon or like do the good route. And so like playing Renegade, I've played through all of the Mass Effect games, both Paragon and Renegade, but I have distinctly stronger memories of playing through Paragon. And so I wanted to kind of go in and see. And one of the I realized very quickly, one of the reasons I think I'm always a little averse to doing Renegade runs in these games is, especially on the side quests, you'll be talking to somebody and I'll choose something that I think is the Renegade option, and really it's the no, I'm just not going to do this quest option. And there's such a murkier kind of territory in the distinction between those two choices, whereas like Paragon, it's always easy. Yeah, I'm going to help you and I'm going to do it, probably for free or something like that. Versus like you're on your own, or just no, I'm not going to help you or something like that. Because sometimes you're on your own, the other character will respond and be like, well, if you're in the neighborhood and you can do it, please do, and you get the quest thing. And then other times it'll be like, you just decided to not do this quest, and so the quest is marked complete because you're just not going to help that person out. Another thing I thought about as I was revisiting this is just how great it is to see little things that I know will pay off in bigger ways down the line in 2 and 3. Be it your character interactions with a lot of your kind of core squad, of course, how they will kind of return throughout, but even just like miscellaneous characters like the reporter on the Citadel and stuff, and knowing and remembering how you interact with her can come back into play in future games, or Conrad Werner, the your big Shepherd fan. He'll come back depending on if you were nice or mean to him in this game. He'll come back and interact with you in different ways in Mass Effect 2 and 3, and just like reflecting on that entirety as a series, like it saddens me that not only with BioWare we didn't get, more games in that ilk. Obviously we got the Mass Effect games and then the Dragon Age games kind of around the same time, that we're doing this really cool thing of your decisions, will carry forward with you and kind of affect the world around you. And it's a bummer that we don't see that much, like that did not become a thing in gaming. I imagine there's a significant cost to it, and that's probably why. But yeah, that's something I wish I saw more of. I wish we had more of these kinds of overarching epics across many games where your progress will carry forward. Last year we had Final Fantasy VII Remake come out, and while you're not making any like major decisions in that, like it's even that is frustrating because obviously that is a first part of a larger story, and I can't imagine that all of the leveling and getting my characters to max level in that game is going to really carry over, or the materia I powered up in that game is going to carry over into the next game in any kind of meaningful way. I mean, I would love to be proven wrong on that. And oh, yep, if you have your Final Fantasy VII remake save, just carry it over into the new game, and you'll keep all your materia at whatever levels they were at, and you'll keep your characters. I mean, that'd be cool, but I don't see that happening. And yeah, so I wish there were more. I wish in the way that everybody was like, Breath of the Wild has changed games, and we're gonna see all these games that get inspired by Breath of the Wild. I wish we had gotten that with the Mass Effect trilogy. I wish, because it was just such a cool idea. I wish more studios had been like, hey, what if we told this grand sweeping epic where you get to kind of help really color the story over the course of multiple games. I wish that had been a thing that takes off. I was talking with a friend about this recently. Obviously, I think one of the big reasons we don't is because games have become so big, so long to develop, and so hard to develop for, that to do a Mass Effect style trilogy now would span. Like the first game would have to come out now in order to have like a second or third game by the end of the generation, of the PS5 and the Xbox Series generation. And that's like I wish it weren't the case, but that seems to be one of the large driving factors, in my opinion, at least. But overall, revisiting Mass Effect, I had a great time with it. I still. I love that they simplify a lot of things over the course of the series. Like having to go and assign so many attribute points to everything is a little more tedious than I was really looking to do in terms of like my character management in Mass Effect 1. So I like that they simplify that in the future installments. And same with like all of the gear. I love that gear gets simplified a lot in Mass Effect 2 and 3, compared to, again, I was just constantly getting new gear, and every so often I'd reach the 150 limit, and I would go ahead and I would basically like, okay, it's been a while, so I'm going to upgrade. Oh, I've got like level 5 gear on everybody. I'm going to upgrade that to level 8 or level 9 or whatever the highest level I had at the time was. And then I've got to go through and like clear out, I've got, level 9 and level 8 gear. Okay, I can get rid of everything like level 5 and below because I'm never going to go back to any of that stuff. But that takes time to do it. And especially if you're not doing, if you go to the shop, it's easier to just sell all that stuff. But if you're doing it like out in the field, out on a mission or something like that, it was just, that much more tedious. One last thing I'll hop in on in that same vein is the Mako. Like everybody hates the Mako is kind of the the narrative of the original Mass Effect game, and I don't hate the Mako itself. I think the Mako drives fine and is fun. What I hate is the worlds built around the Mako, because the cliffs are often just way steeper than they need to be. And or like basically the way I was thinking about it is if you've got like your chart of the world around you kind of thing, where it's like up and down, up and down, up and down, like you could bring the limits of that in like 30 or 40% in both ways and just kind of flatten all of the worlds, and it would make all of that just so much easier and so much more manageable, as opposed to, oh, I need to get to that mineral thing, but it's on the other side of this like vertical climb, and I don't want to have to drive all the way around to to try and just get that mineral thing. It would be easier if that vertical climb, instead of being like 500 feet tall, is like 40 feet tall or something like that. So it's just maybe not 40 feet, but like 200 feet tall or something like that. Climb over it, get back down to the other side, and boom, you can scan your minerals or whatever. So yeah, I like the Mako combat. I actually quite enjoy, and just like having to, maneuver around, Geth all over the place or something like that, is a cool little just, little change of pace from, the on foot combat that you get in other parts of the game. So yeah, I think those are kind of my big picture thoughts on revisiting Mass Effect. Held up way better than I thought it would, and just kind of brought such a wonderful sense of nostalgia. Especially, I've talked about this I think elsewhere. Like the original Mass Effect was not my first Mass Effect. The first time I played Mass Effect, it was Mass Effect 2 when Mass Effect came to the PlayStation, because I didn't have a 360. And I enjoyed Mass Effect 2 so much that I went and picked up the original game on PC and played it there, which was a thing that I just didn't normally do at the time. But I wanted to see kind of the origins of a lot of those characters, and doing that, of course, helps a lot of things in Mass Effect 2 hit differently than they did for me the first time around, because I don't know, the relationships that you build up in the first game. I didn't know that the second time around, or the first time I was playing Mass Effect 2 rather. So yeah, it's probably the game in the series I've played the least, but it's still a very near and dear game, as the whole franchise is to me. Well, whole franchise minus Andromeda, but Andromeda, I mean, like, that's one I would be interested to go back and see if my now that if I go in kind of knowing what that game is and what that game isn't, if my opinions on Mass Effect Andromeda would change, and if I would enjoy it for what it is and not belittle it for what it's not, in this day and age. Maybe that's something I'll do. Following the Mass Effect trilogy kind of replay that I'll be doing, inevitably in a few months' time. But yeah, really enjoyed going back to Mass Effect here. I especially enjoy that now all this will be very fresh in my mind for comparison purposes in a couple months. But yeah. So yeah, that's pretty much what I've been up to this last week. Just really Carto and Mass Effect, and then again, like, hopping in, still doing a few games of Fortnite each day and stuff. I am surprised at how many actual wins I've picked up in Fortnite. Because I go into every solo match pretty much not intending to win, or not even intending to try to win. I'm just doing whatever challenges I'm trying to knock out that are just easier to do in solo, and then I'll get down to like the top 10 or something like that, and I'll be like, is this how am I gonna do? And then I'll suddenly be in like the top 3 or something, and I'll just see 2 people fighting. I'm like, all right, if I can just go and like clean up the pieces here, am I gonna? And in those instances, I inevitably lose. But in the instances where like I'm just facing off against clearly other bad players like myself, I can occasionally knock out a win. Like I picked up one last night, and that was pretty cool. Anyway. So yeah, I think that's going to do it for this episode of That Nerdy Site Show. A quick little solo episode. Thank you for joining me. If you liked what you heard, please rate, review, like, subscribe, share the podcast with your friends, all that fun stuff. If you're watching here on YouTube, hit the follow button, hit subscribe, hit the notification bell, ring that bell, blah, 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 all that stuff. And if you're feeling so inclined, you can always support us on Patreon at patreon.com/thatnerdysite. It really helps kind of pay the bills, just kind of pay all of the podcast feed, monthly rates and all that stuff, pay for the website, all that jazz. And yeah, every patron gets early access to a monthly bonus episode of this very show. This month's early access episode, I believe, is me and Cam talking about our gaming blind spots, like the games we just never really got into in gaming, or the franchises. So you can check that out. If you don't want to be a patron, that'll go up live for everybody at the end of the month, as we do every month for those. But if you are a patron, you get to experience those episodes a month early, and we appreciate you for it. So yeah, I think that's going to do it. Thank you for listening. As always, stay nerdy and be good to each other.